Thanks for joining. We'll just get started in a moment. So, time to run to the kettle if you've left your cuppa there. Um,
Right, it looks like most people have joined us. There might be a few more just joining. Are we ready to kick off, Ellie?
let's do it.
Okay, dokes. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We are recording this webinar, so hopefully that's okay. We have a chat function, so if you do have questions, please put them in the chat and we will um, pick some of them up during this, and we can pick some up at the end as well. And any tricky ones we can probably pick up afterwards. We have some slides today. Don't feel like you have to scribble everything down. We can share these with you afterwards. We've got all of your contact details, so we will share those around afterwards as well. So this today is the first of a couple of webinars that we're putting on around community energy, and we wanted to just raise the profile both of community energy and co-ops and the great work they're doing, but also inspire others and help to share stories of what people are doing. So um, today we've got three other speakers as well as myself, which I'll give you an introduction to shortly. So I'm John Dawson from Co-operatives UK, and I lead our community shares work at Co-ops UK. So if anyone is interested in finding out more, I can put my contact details in the chat as well around community shares, and we'll provide you some more links on that as well. We're also delighted to be joined by Neil Bonner from Reading Hydro. So Neil has spent his working career living in Reading, enjoying its growth and prosperity. On retirement, he became a Reading Hydro site volunteer. And yeah, so that's Neil. We'll come on to him in a bit. We've got Kate from Greater Manchester Community Renewables. Kate's a founding director there, and a former director of Stockport Hydro, a community-owned hydro project on the River Goyt. She's also a chartered secretary, has extensive experience of governance and compliance. And then finally, we've got Mark from Westmill Energy, who's had a 30-year career in local government and finance. The last 15 years focused on creating community-owned renewable energy projects. So he chairs the Westmill Wind Co-op, is also a founding director of Westmill Solar Co-op, and a non-executive director at Energy for All as well. So we're very delighted to be joined by these three speakers. If we move on to the next slide, please, Ellie. So yeah, it's just to say welcome, and part of the reason we're putting this on is that we are in the midst of Co-op Fortnight. So Cooperatives UK is a national membership body of co-ops, is championing cooperatives and in all their different forms for this whole 2 week period. And you might have seen lots of social media content around the hashtag of Co-ops Fortnight. So we're partly putting this on as part of Co-ops Fortnight, but that has also aligned with the Community Energy Fortnight, which is starting today. So it's a very timely intersection between the two of those and between cooperatives and community energy, which is why partly we have put this on. And in the middle there, to celebrate Co-ops Fortnight, we have commissioned this lovely video um, of a poem around cooperatives. So if you are interested, it's a lovely video to go and watch afterwards. We can share you around the link to that. And we may be on the cusp of having our first cooperative party prime minister as well. So things are definitely aligning at the moment, shall we say? So if we move on to the next slide. Many of you, from looking at the attendance list, will be very familiar with what co-ops are, but we thought it would be just worth mentioning briefly. As Co-ops UK, we're sort of duty bound to do this. But we publish annual data on cooperatives, and this is from our report, our co-op economy report from last year, stating that there were over 7,000 independent co-ops in the UK, with an annual income of over £40 billion. But what's also exciting and what differentiates it from other business models is that there's a membership behind co-ops. And at the heart of what a co-op is, it's all about the members. And there was over 16 million memberships of cooperatives across the country as well. So if you do want to find out more, we've got a map there under the uk.coop/directory, which gives you maps of all your local co-ops. And that report goes into loads more detail as well. So you can have a look at that afterwards in your own time as well. And if we just move on to the next slide, Um, just to emphasize, really, I know many of you will be familiar with this, but I think what is just worth emphasizing is that this isn't just about renewable energy. This isn't just about who owns renewable energy, but at the heart of cooperatives are internationally agreed seven cooperative values, principles that are about how cooperatives can run. And it might just be worth organizations from time to time going over these and thinking, well, actually, what is it about getting stuff into community ownership as community energy? What makes us different? And I think these values and principles do help to embed those. So it might be something that if you're getting bogged down in the energy side of things, you could have a stop and think, well, actually, what is it about the co-op structure that we can make the most of what we're doing? And we know from our research, we've just put a stat here from that co-op economy report, that the whole way of operating as a co-op does tend to lead to more successful and viable business models longer term. You've got the stat there that over 80% of co-ops are still trading after 5 years, which compares really favorably to more commercially minded businesses. So we just pop on to the next slide. When it comes to co-ops and community energy, so Community Energy England puts the capacity of community energy. This was in 2024, so no doubt it's gone up quite a bit since, which is on your screen there at 575 gigawatts. Some of these numbers won't mean much to people, but the number that maybe does is the equivalent to 212,000 domestic households. So, that's big, but in the scale of the whole UK energy market, it is still a small percentage. But we know there are over 300 co-ops producing renewable energy, and that the income that they produce is almost 60 million pounds. We also know that from tracking our data that organizations using community energy have been the dominant force within the community shares market. So they have raised over 140 million pounds into 300 community energy share offers. So, there's a well-trodden path here. It's an established route of raising capital to get energy into cooperatively run and community owned hands in local communities. And generally these days, that's through a community benefit society model, but not always. Sometimes it's cooperative models or other business models as well. I've put two links there which you can look at afterwards. We have a business support for co-ops program, which will can provide guidance and advice and support and commissioned in expertise to help you set up and run a cooperative. So if you are interested in that, you might want to have a look at that afterwards. We also have access to a national investment readiness fund called the Reach Fund. So we are one of the access points for that, and we can help organisations to access up to £15,000 of development grants to get ready for drawing down investment, and that can include community share offers. So if you're at the stage of thinking, right, we're ready to launch a share offer, but we don't know how to get everything ready to do that, we can help you do that as well. So we skip on to the next slide. Just to tell you a little bit about community shares, because I'd probably be remiss not to. I think that's Reading Hydro at the bottom, and it's Grimsby Community Energy Solar at the top. So you can see there are different types of community energy there as well. But community shares themselves are nothing new. Withdrawable share capital in co-ops has existed for a very long time, but about 15, 20 years ago, we decided to put more of a name around this and start formalizing this and giving people more guidance on how to do that. And in that time, the concept of community shares has developed and grown as something much more recognizable across the country. So it is withdrawable, it's not transferable. You can't sell your shares to someone else. You can't hope to speculate on an early investment and hope that you can sell for a large amount in due course. So this isn't like people might be familiar with in more commercial settings of company shares. There's no capital gain, but what you can gain is interest on your investments, and you can gradually request to withdraw your investments in due course as well. And unlike company investments, it's a very democratic model in that one member equals one vote, regardless of how much he put in, whether that's £100 or £50,000. So this is quite a much more democratic model than more commercial finance. And we do find it can de-risk loan finance. Lenders like to see that there's some other money in the mix. It means they're not lending 100% of a project. But also we see it's very attractive for grant funders. If you're able to say we've got 50, 100, 500 people who've put their own money in, that really helps projects to start moving forward and funders to believe that this is something that local community is behind and backs. So we do see that community shares plays a really important part in a lot of funding mixes, and particularly for community energy projects. Now, we've run something called the Booster Fund for the last 10 years, which is invested in share offers itself. We've invested £5 million in community share offers, over 100 share offers. And we've found on average, the individual investments sorry, community investors have invested has been 1,771. That's just on our small cohort of community energy projects. But it is the second largest amount behind housing of what the average individual investor will invest. So, on the surface, there is money out there to be invested, but those figures are slightly skewed because we also know sometimes some of these offers can also attract a small number of larger investors. So on our investments, we've had individuals and communities personally investing 20, 30,000 pounds individually. And then you also get a lot of people who might be investing 100, 200 pounds. So you do get a full range across that. Now, there's a link there which will give you access to various resources, guidance online. So I'll let you follow that, at your leisure. We do have something called the Community Shares Handbook and the Community Shares Finance Guide, which gives you all the details you'll need on running share offers. So if we just flick on to the final slide from me, I probably don't need to say this. Most of you will be very familiar with this, but the local power plan has now been published earlier this year with an ambition to scale up community energy massively. And where I said community energy, was a small part of the national mix. I think GB Energy does want to expand that with an ambition to put up to £1 billion of investment into this, and a target for over 1,000 local energy projects. So we do expect this to grow, and we do want people to keep in mind, how to raise capital confidently, but successfully and in a prudent way, but also how to think about how you run a co-op behind the scenes. It's not just about raising the money and installing the energy, but how do you successfully run a co-op and engage your members as well. So I'll leave it there for now, and I'll pause and hand over to Neil, who's primed and ready, I hope, to give us a little bit about Reading Hydro.
Thank you very much indeed, John. Hopefully you can hear me. So if you move the slide forward, please, Ellie. So my name is Neil Bonner, as I say, and I'm one of 60 plus volunteers today keeping the hydro that you can see in the picture in front of you, working and functioning and delivering electricity to our customers. During the construction phase, there was something like 150 of us to build this or to help build this, and upwards of 750 investors from the local community. And I have to agree with John, a lot of the effort and the understanding of how to do it and how to make and how to run the community benefit scheme came from information from the co-op and their active enthusiasm and support from the Booster Fund to make us able to go out. If you move on, please, Ellie. So that we could move from basically this, which is the 1.4 meter drop at Reading Caversham Weir, which our original founder in 2013 muttered, Tony, this is a terrible waste of energy. All that water just pouring over that weir. We have to do something about this. So Tony, being one of those make it happen type people, as like some others, decided that he would try and do something about it. And so he set up a group back even in 2013, talking about how to do it, what was needed, how you would do it. And if you hit go forward, Ellie, then his vision was this, that we would have a nice set of turbines sitting on this weir, generating electricity for the next as long as we can manage it. And so he rounded up people and resources, and as I say, brought in help from the cooperative community. And it was very much felt because it was being done by volunteers. Tony was volunteering his time. He'd worked as a builder, so he knew what was involved in doing this. He wasn't just waving his fingers in the air. He knew what he had to do. And but he wanted it to be a community offering. He didn't want individual people buying and building it and running it for their own private wealth. So in 2016, the group of volunteers was set up. Some money was provided actually by the cooperative and that group to start the process of building all the recommendations and the trialing and the information that you needed to be able to submit a planning permission request and all the other hoops and things that you have to get through. By 2020, again, with help from the co-op on how to raise shares, we had raised £1.2 million. So reasonable sum of money, because actually that block of concrete over there is quite expensive. And so we began generating in September 21. So if we go on to the next stage, so I got involved at about that point. So this is what will become the fish pass. So the Environment Agency, as part of our planning permission, required some planning gain, right? It's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. They wanted to get some benefit from the fact we were going to use the water. So they demanded that we build a fish pass, and the quote to build it was quite high. So Tony said, we don't have to pay for that. We can build that quite happily ourselves. So we dug this channel, which is actually running down. So behind that bit of fencing at the top that you can see is the higher level of the Thames, and the lower level of the Thames is where you can see that stream on the left, which hadn't run a lot of water through it for a very long time. So things were about to change for that. So if you move it forward again, Ellie, this is in fact Tony and myself busily building concrete into this path. So it was an exercise. We obviously landed up with COVID in the middle of all this, so we were having to take quite a lot of precautions and numbers, and we were outside and all the other things. But we needed to have finished, because at that time there was a mandate that we had to have finished by a certain date in order to still get the feed-in tariff, and the feed-in tariff was quite an important element of our calculations. And so we had to get a move on, even though it was winter and even though we were having problems with the weather. We had to work through what was happening. So if you move forward another one, so this is what it looks like today. So this is the end result of our handiwork. And so this is an eel pass is what it actually is. It's to allow the eels to progress up the river, because the normal type salmon runs that you see on weirs are too brutal for them. They can't manage to get through that strength. It's a big fish that can do that. So this is a much gentler progression that the fish can pass through and enjoy. And this is where I got into this whole thing. Basically, I had retired, and my wife decided she didn't want to share the house with me quite yet. So I had to find something to do, and she sent me off to join her friend Tony, sorting all this out. So I think if you've got one more wipe to go, yes. And so having built it and helped run it for a bit, I was asked to become a director. And the interesting thing is, when you're asked to become a director at Reading Hydro, literally the first thing they do is they hand you this book, which is written by John and that group at the co-op in how to be a director of a community benefit society, right? So back to this, they support us through all of this sort of work. So even though I didn't really have a great deal of knowledge about what legally I had to do and how and what, they were in a position to help even at this point, right? We'd done, dusted, we'd finished, we'd moved on, but they're still providing ongoing support and help to the organisation. So one more wipe, please. So here we are now with the final answer. The benefits of being a co-op. For us, it's basically, we've built this not for us, right? Most of us, by definition of volunteers, is they're older, right? So we're building this for our children. This will outlive me quite happily. I think the first service is expected to outlive me. So everyone's a volunteer. We're all giving our time for free, but we're not wanting necessarily for that to be part of a single person's profit. We want it to be as we repay the shares, as John was explaining, we can repair the shares, gradually move more of the hydro scheme effectively becomes owned by the Community Benefit Society. And the Community Benefit Society, by definition, is part of the Reading area. So that is where we're trying to get this to. We've now built it, we're now running it, it's progressing. But as with all things, things change. So if you wipe one more, this is the daily river flow down the Thames for the last for the 25 years before we started building. So to try and give us an idea about how much of the year we could actually generate for. And so the interesting one is the sort of yellow line towards the bottom, which is the average of all of those details. So again, like all renewables, there are times when you just can't generate, right? So we had to stop generating on Monday, because the river flow down the Thames has got below the level that we can extract what we need and still leave enough water for the rest of the organisations that are using it at this time. And realistically, we probably won't start up again until September. So although we generate 7 hours a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when we have the water, unlike solar, unlike wind sort of thing, but we have our out times just like everybody else does. And so it's interesting how the times and the effects of this, because the other problem we have is too much water is actually almost as bad as too little. We're very three bears. And I think that's probably my time is up. So I will say thank you very much indeed. Any questions? I will send my email out at the end of this. And if you've got any questions or you actually want to come and see us, let me know and I can arrange that. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Neil. And I assume, the generation of energy, electricity is working as per you'd hoped. I know maybe not right now, but on
Yes,
average
no,
throughout
the generation is working very well for us. The nature, as anybody in energy will understand, we're not allowed to sell to the public under the current rules. So we had to find an individual purchaser that we could connect directly to in order to be able to make the finances work again. And we were very lucky that we had an understanding purchaser within a cable's length that we could get to. And we sell our energy to a local local Lido on the other side of the river from us. And so they run using our electricity. And then when the surplus electricity they're not using goes into the grid, because there's a national grid substation just next door to them. And so it actually works quite neatly from our point of view. So yes, we are currently generating our maximum for as many days of the year as we can manage it. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely. A nice circular kind of local story there as well, of supporting a local Lido as well.
Yeah.
And I love the eels. The eel pass sounded brilliant.
Yeah, no, the eel pass is lovely, and we have a heron who regularly sits in the river, so we're pretty certain there's something in there.
Yeah, there must be. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Neil. If there are any further questions for Neil, please pop them in the chat. Otherwise, I will pass on to Kate from Greater Manchester Community Renewables. Neil, I think, are you able to hang around for this next bit?
Yes,
And if there are any further questions?
Certainly. I'm interested in listening to other people's examples.
Lovely. Right. Well, thanks all, but over to you, Kate.
Well, thank you very much. So yeah, as John mentioned earlier, I'm Kate Eldridge. I'm one of the founding directors of GMCR, which stands for Greater Manchester Community Renewables. And I have a corporate governance background, but I've also done a lot of volunteering on environmental issues, like with Friends of the Earth, and as mentioned, as the director of Stockport Hydro in the past. So on the next slide, I'll just talk about how we started out. So it was the end of 2014, and we were a group of volunteers who wanted to do something about climate change. And some of us had already been involved in community energy, community hydro, and others through Friends of the Earth. And basically, we copied the business models of other community energy groups in other parts of the country, and we wanted to bring those benefits that they were seeing to the north of England too. We decided to focus on schools and community buildings because we wanted to showcase renewable technology in the heart of the community. We also wanted to support education on climate change and energy. And we felt that helping schools would resonate with potential members across the community, whether they were interested in green issues or not. We formed a community benefit society because we had seen from other groups that you could raise more money through investment rather than through donations. And we couldn't be a technical co-op because due to electricity regulations, we couldn't sell the electricity directly to members, as Neil was saying before. And we also wanted to create that community fund from the profits so that we could do more eco-friendly projects in the local area. So how it works is that members of the community buy shares in GMCR, and we use that investment to pay for the solar array, install that on the school roof or community building roof. And that generates clean energy for the school to use. And the school gets that electricity at a discounted rate than they would pay their main supplier. And electricity not used, as Neil was saying before, is exported to the grid. And we use that income to pay for our insurance costs, our maintenance costs, and our admin costs, as well as providing a modest return to those members who invested and paying their capital back over time. And as mentioned previously, the profits go to community funds so we can do more eco-friendly projects, carbon reduction, energy efficiency, and environmental education. So our main aims are on the next slide, which is to cut carbon emissions, reduce bills, and create locally owned energy. When we started, our ambition was to have 1 megawatt of solar on 20 to 25 sites across Greater Manchester. And we thought that would need over £1 million of community investment to do that. So the next slide is about how are we doing? So we've done 5 community share offers over the past decade, and we've raised over £900,000 in community shares. We've currently got 826 kilowatts installed across 11 sites, and that'll go up to 964 when our newest arrays are commissioned in the next few weeks. We've generated almost 3,000 megawatt hours of clean green electricity, which is enough to make 160 million cups of tea. We've saved over 1,000 tonnes of CO2 by displacing power that would otherwise have come from polluting gas-fired power stations. And we've saved our partners at schools and community centres over £200,000 collectively on their bills. And one of the things that we were able to do when energy prices spiked, when Russia invaded Ukraine, was that everyone else's prices went up and we were able to keep our prices low. And so we did. Another thing that we've achieved over the past decade is that community fund. So we've generated £70,000 for the community fund, which has gone to schools and charities and funded small school projects like bird box cameras to go into wider, broader initiatives like peat moss restoration, that's been led by the Wildlife Trust. And recently we gave £20,000 to 3 charities to go towards solar installations that they were doing on their buildings. So on the next slide, I'll talk about why is it important to me that we're a community benefit society. So building trust with partners who might like to have solar on their roof and might be sceptical about commercial operators. We sort of have a similar ethos to a school or community centre because we want to take care of the environment for future generations. It's good to be a community benefit society because you're eligible to apply for certain grants, and we can do a community share offer without the regulations that a company would need to apply. Now, ownership brings power, and we can give people a chance to have a stake in the transition to a low carbon economy. We're also giving people an opportunity to do something, whether it's a volunteer or as a member. And becoming a member of GMCR, it isn't a time-consuming activity, but it's an ethical local investment that enables people to do something to help the community and the environment. And members can literally see the tangible benefits and where their money has gone. For me personally, I think one of the most important things to help cope with the climate anxiety and the worries about where the world is going is to do something about it. And while there are things we can do individually, like choosing what we eat and how we travel, the most powerful changes are the ones that we make together. Our voices are stronger when we act collectively, and we can achieve changes on a larger scale to make it easier for everyone to choose the eco-friendly option. So tackling climate change was my main motivator when I got involved with GMCR. But since then, I've been thinking about the feelings across the country encapsulated by the Brexit Take Back Control slogan, and the way that local economies are impacted when the money of local people is sucked out and goes to distant multinationals, means it's not reinvested back at home. And so as we see the rise of far-right narratives, to me, it's now more important than ever that we have more community ownership, because it provides a real life vision of the kind of economy we could have where members have a say and benefits stay local. And my next slide is just to say thank you for listening. Over to you, John.
Great. Thank you, Kate. That was really good. I particularly liked the 160 million cups of tea. If there's a more British way of trying to get people to understand the impact of something than comparing to tea, I'm not quite sure what it could be. But it was also great to hear some of your own personal motivations for getting involved, and I guess, the longer term impact to local economies that you feel co-ops and raising capital in this way and running projects like this can have. So that was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We did have a question there about withdrawals, and I might just come to you and the other Neil and Mark if you want to chip in as well. But someone was asking about withdrawals of capital. Have you enabled
Yeah.
withdrawals of investment capital so far? Because you've done 5 share
So,
offers, which is amazing.
yeah, so at GMCR, we've done some share offers where we've put a budget in basically for some withdrawals every year. And in our later share offers, we kind of automatically repay back the capital. But in the earlier ones, we didn't do that. And so it was up to people if they wanted to apply for a withdrawal. But in the rules of the society, it is at the board's discretion as to whether withdrawals can happen. And so, if we'd exceeded that budget, or if we were in the middle of doing a share, if we're trying to raise capital, and then people, you can also put pauses on it. So you do have some limits on that to make sure that you suddenly don't have to find £100,000 from down the back of the sofa.
And as I understand it, for solar projects, it's particularly projects where you've got assets with a limited lifespan, you want to make sure you've paid back the capital generally by the end of that lifespan as well, so that you're not sitting on too much of other people's capital.
So we found that because the feed-in tariff, which was a payment that you got for generating clean energy, that finished in 2019 for new applications, that was a 20-year payment. So if you were eligible for it, then you would get it over 20 years. And so we created our business model based on the income and expenditure we projected over a 20-year period. And even though there isn't the feed-in tariff now, and we've still been doing new installations, we've still gone with that 20-year lifespan, and the panels will last longer than that. They will probably still generate 80% of what they do on day one, in 20 years' time. But that's the time period over which we plan to repay that capital.
Great. Thank you. So I'll move on to Mark now. If there are any particular questions for Kate or just general questions, please pop them in the chat. But for now, we'll pivot from hydro to solar to Mark. You've got quite a lot of experience in wind at Westmill Wind, but I think you've also got lots of other experience. So we'll pass you over to Mark now.
Thank you so much. I'm going to show a series of 18 slides. So I will show some pictures of technology. Can people hear me okay? Just check.
Yeah, yep.
But I wanted to talk about power of communities and of the cooperative model. And the picture on the left there is our members. We are 2 member co-ops, not community benefit societies, voting at the Westmill AGM. And the picture on the right, which I'll come back to towards the end, is of co-ops, energy co-ops from across Europe coming together. There are 2 million members of energy co-ops across Europe, 21,000 energy co-ops in an association, which I'm president of as well. But if we show the next slide, we'll go back a couple of decades. And this is a picture of Westmill when we had just raised the money to buy the solar farm. So it was a moment of joy. And the people in the front there, the woman with the bright yellow dress and the guy next to her, are the landowners who made it happen. So next slide is Westmill. You'll see there's 2 co-ops there, 2 member co-ops. Westmill Wind. It's a working organic farm. It's a centre of biodiversity, one of the most biodiverse parts of Oxfordshire, because it's got bees, it's got insects, and you'll see a whole load of amazing wildlife. And we built the 5 turbines. So next slide. And you will see we are a co-op. Wind is owned by 2,500 members. It was interesting hearing earlier, the average member has put in £1,800. But actually, a lot of people put in £250, which at the time was the minimum, and then some put in the maximum. So it's a sort of 2 sort of peaks there. And we would not have existed. When we did this, as I'll explain, it was one of the first of this sort. We only exist because of the energy and support of the cooperative movement, the mid-counties, the co-op bank, and the phone co-op, as was now part of mid-counties, who all went out to follow that principle of co-ops supporting other co-ops. And that is a picture of one of the school trips and the visitors in the education programme. So next slide, I think, goes into a little bit of history. I'm not going to go through all the history. The key thing is it took a long, long time, as I'm usually would say, it's longer than Heathrow Terminal 5 to get the planning permission to do this. So the landowner put up an anemometer. It took 5 years to get the planning permission, the first planning permission, by which time the company building the turbines had gone bust because nobody was buying them because they couldn't get planning permission. He had a community group, and in 2003, Energy for All stepped in to try and support it. And this was their second project. First one had grown out of Bay Wind in Cumbria, and they said, what could we do to create more of a cooperative model? So the next slide gives a little bit more. That is a met mast. If you ever want to build a wind farm, first thing you need to know is there any wind? So you put one of those up and you measure the wind over the year, and then you can sort of map it against the nearby Met Office, and you can sort of work out what a 20-year wind energy profile will look like. And you need that to do a share offer. And the next slide is what then happened. So we finally got planning permission in 2005. It was the casting vote of the planning committee. And that shows you this project nearly didn't happen. And on several occasions, as I say, people went out of their way to help. People are basically good, is what I've taken from this. So we got planning permission. We did a share offer. Siemens couldn't deliver it, so we went to a backup. They then couldn't deliver it. We went back to Siemens, and one manager in Siemens put us to the front of the queue so that we could do it. We raised the extra £1 million we needed to do in 3 weeks. And then, next slide, we had this successful call. The co-op bank gave us a 12-year loan. We confirmed the order. We put in the power purchase. We built it, and we erected it on the 19th of February. If you own a wind farm, you want lots of wind during the winter. If you're building a wind farm, you want absolutely no wind when you're putting them up, because it's not very safe if you try and do it in the middle of a gale. And the construction team worked through the night. There was this massive storm coming in, and were they going to get the last turbine up? And they did it by spotlight. It's pretty amazing. So there you go. That's wind. And the next slide is just a couple of pictures. That's what the bottom of a turbine looks like. That is 330 cubic meters of concrete. and 33 metric tons of steel reinforcing. And somebody said to me just recently, it looks like a sunflower, actually, when you look at it like that. Anyway, next slide. That's me standing on top of the reinforcing. And because it was done in the middle of winter, we had to wrap the concrete in foam to stop it cooling down too quickly and cracking. And then the next slide. And because the planners were so nervous, we had to bury the cable 1.5 kilometres. So of that, of the £8 million it cost to build it, about £1 million was spent digging the cable to connect it to the grid connection 1.5 kilometres away. And the next slide is, so, you know, we were exhausted at the end of that. We were, what on earth have we done? And then solar came along. So there was an opportunity. We knew the fit prices were dropping, but the landowner negotiated with an ethical developer, and they built this solar farm. They built it like 3 days before the end of the feed-in tariff, so they got the original feed-in tariff. At the time, it was 1% of UK's solar capacity. And it wasn't community owned, it was privately owned. They were prepared to sell it to us, but we had to find £15 million. And that's far more than anybody's ever done. This is way back in 2011. So the next slide shows how we did it. I will explain the zebra in a minute. So we had this opportunity. We had a 1-year window. In fact, they extended it for 3 months. We tried to work out a joint ownership model, didn't work. So we decided we'd go and buy it. The maximum you can raise through a share offer on a member community share offer is €5 million, actually, but £5 million. So we had to find £12 million loan. You need working capital and other bits, so that's why it's not 15 million. So we happen to know Investec. They are a South African bank. They've got a zebra in the front. Everybody pats the nose of this polystyrene zebra, including the most serious city folk, which is why it's all gone black on the front there, myself included. Anyway, and as it happens, I happen to know Lancashire County Council Pension Fund. I was doing a different project, and they agreed to take the bond. And so, next slide. We bought the solar farm, and then that picture I showed at the start of all of us cheering is us having done it all. But what have we done since then? Well, we've shown 18,000 visitors around. We've developed an education program, worked with 5 schools. If you ever go to the turbines, they're all named by the local schools. So Gusty Gizmo, Zeus, and all the other ones there. And that education program has gone far and wide. So we in our last meeting, we had an amazing video from a group of Ukrainian school children, because they have translated our program with our agreement into Ukrainian. And the community cooperative there is putting solar arrays on water pumping stations and hospitals. Equipped and built by ex-service people, and they are spreading the idea of community-owned energy to a country in the middle of a war zone. So there's something there about spreading the cooperative model. We've given £1 million in community benefit. We support women's education in the developing world, and we support other co-ops nearby. There isn't a community centre within 10 kilometres that hasn't had an energy survey and quite possibly solar panels on it to make them work. We've also looked and mapped where our money goes. And Neil was saying earlier about, as was Kate, about the idea that it's owned by people. So the £2.8 million that we have given in interest and returns on capital, 40% of our members live within 40 kilometres. So that's 2.8 million that's gone back into the community. The solar chair helped create Community Energy England. There's a Belgian co-op called MeSize, which is a funding agency that brings some of the largest community energy groups, like EcoPower in Belgium and Enecop in France. And we have helped launch their energy funding co-op. So Westmill is working with some of the biggest energy co-ops in Europe. It's a centre of biodiversity, And the work that we've done, because some of what we then pay to Energy for All has helped Energy for All grow. It has grown over this period from 3 co-ops to 35, and some of them have 100 sites within them, like the schools program. And as both Kate and Neil have said, it's really hard to sell your electricity in the UK. But one of the things that we've done is create an energy trading dividend. So we fund through Co-op Energy a discount on electricity bills. So if you buy your electricity from us, you will receive via Co-op Energy, you receive a £50 discount on your bill. That's roughly equivalent to what the mid-counties would give on their dividend. And we're now working with Co-op Energy on the actual energy trading, Community Energy Club. And I think the next slide, we're coming towards the end. I just thought I'd show you a couple of pictures. So these are visitors. This is the big picture is the Energy Minister, Michael Shanks, came and was inspired. The woman and the man on the left was one of our annual meetings, and they were, the woman's English and the bloke is Dutch. They cycled there, and we knew it's going to be the 10,000th visitor. So we were counting down, and they came in, there was a great roar, and we all clapped them in. You're the 10,000th visitors. They were slightly stunned by this. And the woman there did a video the next year when we did one talking about what it meant for her to be part of this sort of project. I've got another 2 slides, I think, and then I'll finish up. Last week, we showed around the European Climate Foundation, one of the biggest funders of community energy across Europe and the UK. UK's in Europe. And we had funders there and program developers from Ethiopia, from Brazil, Mexico, Japan, China, the United States, other parts of Europe, and they were looking at how to create community energy models in other parts of the world. So we were showing them what we've done. And the sheep there, we have a shepherdess on Westmill. Then there's a flock of sheep that, as you can see, like to stay underneath the solar panels. And if you had a woolly coat last week, you'd want to stay underneath those panels. So that's them. And that was actually a picture as well I just took last week of just the wildflowers to show you what a beautiful site it is. So if you're in Oxfordshire, come round, place is completely open. You can walk, jog, walk the dog, whatever. Next slide. And what are we going to do now? Because we have a brilliant couple of boards. We're planning a 10 megawatt solar extension, and we've got that going through planning. We're looking to extend the life of the wind farm. So we accelerated the depreciation, so it'll be fully depreciated next year. We paid back some of our members' capital. We're looking to move actually to become a permanent co-op rather than 2 temporary co-ops. We're looking to bring the 2 co-ops together. We're looking at using the 10 megawatt extension to raise money, but raise it from many people to make a more diverse membership and enthuse a new generation. So it's not just raising money. By creating more cooperative members, you're actually building a movement. And we've got discussions ongoing with local energy consumers. So one option might also be a private wire with some of our supply. So we're looking to increase our impact. And as well as that, we are both members with Energy for All, and really encourage others to think about being members of ResCoop, open to community energy cooperative groups, and actually trying to create and drive this movement across the whole of Europe. And I think the next slide is the last one, he says. Yeah, I just finished with this. So I started with a picture of co-op. This is us in Jurmala in Latvia this year. And that is a group of people from all across Europe, from Ukraine in the east to Portugal in the west, from Ireland in the west to Estonia and the Baltic states and Finland in the east. And what it is showing is it's people young, middle-aged and old who are part of an energy transition, but who are also part of a democratic transition. This is bringing people together Croats working with Serbs, working with Bosnians, South Cypriots working with Turkish Cypriots to build boundaries across communities. So cooperatives and community energy is important to avoid climate breakdown. And it's also a broader peace process. And I think I've agreed that I'll give a broader talk on what's happening across Europe at a later date. So come back and hear more. Thank you. I hope I haven't overrun.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Somehow you've distilled down into about 10 slides what must be something like 15 years work, if not more, of getting that all together. Absolutely incredible, the amounts of capital raise and energy. And I've no doubt that the cooperation that you so eloquently enthused about there helped to get you through all of those hurdles, like the tenacious perseverance that you put in there to just keep plugging away. I'm sure your membership and your structure definitely helped to make that happen. So no, that was amazing. Thank you. And a very fine display of that principle 6 we started with at the beginning of cooperation amongst cooperatives to hopefully inspire others. So if there are any questions, now's your final chance to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, I will just propose a quick question to all three of you as a sort of final leaving point. But we titled this webinar around the power of community energy. I just wondered if all three of you could just give a slight insight into the membership side of your organization. So not the power as in what you're generating, but what is it that about having that membership, what is it about the power of the community and the members in your organization that help to drive things forward and keep things working and ticking over for you? If I come to you, Neil, first, I may be putting you on the spot, but I just wondered if you've got any reflections on that side of power.
Yeah, it has empowered our within the local area. The vast majority of our investors pretty much live within a couple of kilometers of where we are. We didn't have big investors. Most of them, as Mark was saying, were effectively comparatively small. The minimum investment was, I think, £100. Might have been less, actually, might have been 10. And people could invest what they wanted. Not, there was no that massive amount, but it did create a buzz. It made people, and I mean, if you look at the picture of the aerial picture, the path beside us is a very heavily used footpath, and we have constant streams of people coming past. And when I'm down there working on the turbines, they're always stopping and saying, "Oh, what about this? How about that? Oh, I invested. I've got my money. Why is it not generating? I've invested in this." And so we have a lot of feedback from the local community, and it's quite surprising just how many of them are literally coming past and checking up on us. And it's great because, as Mark was saying, we've got a schools liaison team, so there are the local schools come across. There's another bunch turning up, I think, next week. And they talk to them and they show them around and they get them introduced and excited about, yes, it's not just somebody else can do something over there. It's actually, they can be part of this. They can do this. It's driven by a lot of and younger people. I mean, it's fine for old people like me who are long since retired. But there's a lot of younger generation who want to be part of something which is making a change. So yeah, no, I think it's good for our immediate environment
Thanks,
from a
Neil.
personal view.
Thank you. And Kate?
I guess we've got about 400 members, I would say, and a lot of them have been found. We found them through who we know, through our network, through all those years of volunteering with Friends of the Earth. So a lot of people, we see the name on the share register and we know what they look like, if you know what I mean. I would say with ours, because it's like we don't need people to rake the trash screen every day and that kind of thing. The arrays on the school, which is not where we are, and so it's a different kind of thing. But I would say, probably there's the volunteers. I would say there's it's another way of engaging with people. That if people come to us when it's not been a share offer period, for example, and they want to get involved and they want to give something, or if they haven't got the cash to be able to put an investment in, then I think that's a really nice way of building community of people who can be part of it in another way as well as being a member.
Fab. Thank you, Kate. And Mark, any thoughts on that?
In terms of membership, yeah, I think I it's easiest when I'm third because I can I've had more time to think. So thank you, Neil and Kate, for giving me that time. I think that the membership does, I've written down here 4 things. I think our members, so about 3,500 members in total, if you put the 2 co-ops together, and they help in all sorts of ways. So there's about 150 of them who regularly come to the annual meetings and events. And like Kate, we sort of know them, say hello and whatever. And like Neil, if you've got a wind farm, if one of the turbines isn't turning, one of our members is going to ring up and say, why is it not turning? And I think they have been advocates for cooperative models as well. And as I say, Mid-Counties and as was Fen Co-op are both really powerful in that. The grant programme, I just sort of jumped over. The group of volunteers help do that actually. So the grants that we give are decided by our members who drew together the framework, and there's a grants panel that meets once a year and looks at that. There's the expertise that we had when we were building, for example, the wind farm. We put a call out to our members, and it turned out that 2 of the most experienced people in the wind development sector were members. And so we got this advice that we could never have paid for. We wouldn't have been able to afford it because of our members there. And one of our members, for example, one of the former wind directors, is now leading the Baltic offshore wind generation for the public company. So he's put in 3 gigawatts of wind generation whilst being a part-time director. So just getting those directors is just amazing. And the guides that the charity have that do visits once, twice a week. There's a whole network of guides out there. And the final thing I'd say is that, and I can't front this up with evidence, so I always put it at the end, but you see members doing different things as a result. I certainly am somebody who retrofitted their house and has become much more involved with the co-op movement because I was involved with climate change and it was a co-op, and that's got me involved with more co-ops. So the food that we eat comes from a co-op, the electricity we buy, the broadband that's connecting me now, these all come from co-ops. So I think that we have, in different ways, brought a significant number of people in and enthused a different generation about what a different economic model can look like.
Great. Well, thank you all. That's brilliant. We should wrap up shortly. There has been well, 2 questions there, which I will put to the panel, but I'm aware people might need to skip off for a further meeting. But if you've got a moment just to reflect on either how do you recruit and retain volunteers, and any thoughts on attracting finance from pension funds. So maybe the pension funds one might be one for you, Mark, or other funders with big green sustainability. But would anyone like to tackle either of those questions?
I'm happy to go on very briefly and then let my colleagues have a chance to think about those. So in terms of members, we pay our directors a fee. I actually think it's quite important. Otherwise, you'll end up with people like me who are retired white men. And if you want to get people from different backgrounds, younger people who are working, you really have to go out and do that. And you need to recruit and look carefully. And we've made a real effort. So we have people in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s on our board, and deliberately so. And every director is equal and a full director. We don't have youth directors or anything like that. And it brings huge advantages of different perspectives. So I think it's absolutely essential. And we do physically I'm always on the lookout for volunteers. So I'm over at a session, I think somebody's quite passive and whatever, particularly if they're from a different background. I'm up there like a shot trying to recruit them for one of our boards. And in terms of pension funds, I think it's a real challenge. Local authority pension funds have been merged, went from 89 down to 6. I think there's a real issue of trying to scale up projects, and the work in the Netherlands, which is actually bringing a whole series of funders together and having a pipeline of projects. So they help the communities grow and build the expertise, and they bring the funders together, and they have a mechanism there. And I can talk about that at another time.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Kate, did you want to come in, or Neil?
Well, it sounds like Neil has way more volunteers than we do at the hydro, but I can share what we're doing at the moment because we are trying to improve this. So I think like having a clear little job description that you've written, so you know what the person's, they know what they should be doing, and you know what you expect them to be doing, and like regular check-ins with them so that you support them. Just had a really we had a person who'd been at the business school at Manchester and were looking for a job. And so they came to be our finance analyst and they helped us comparing our results to our budget and doing our cash flow forecasting and stuff like that with support. But like now they've secured a job, and they said they talked about volunteering for us in their interview. They were asked like, how would you go about preparing a budget? And they knew the answer because they've just done it. And so like it's sharing these stories more about the good volunteering experiences that people have. I wanted to mention Unity, the Co-op Energy Octopus people. We've got a volunteering platform. We've just put a social media manager role on there. And I think we've got like 5 applications. So there's definitely support out there to help with recruiting volunteers.
Yeah,
Thanks, Kate.
yeah, we've got volunteers because we have works that we tend to land up doing, which gets worse on certain times of year because clearance, the water brings a lot of rubbish down onto the inlet grate, and that impacts on our generation. So we have quite a lot of volunteers involved in that. We effectively we run not a recruitment, but we run a regular request to people to see whether we can get a more diverse group to assist us and to help us. But as Kate was saying, it's trying to get people who will benefit from what they're doing, not, as John said, just old people like us, but actually get people involved who can then use that experience to help them gain a wider perspective of things. So yes, it's a struggle. I mean, as I said, we had 150 when we built, so we're down to 60 now. But that's partly because it's a different scale of work. We have to continue to have a steady flow of volunteers because there will always be attrition.
Thanks all. I should wrap it up now because we said we'd run this for an hour, and my timekeeping, as ever, is very slack. But it felt a shame to interrupt the good discussions that were being had there and squeeze every last drop we could out of our panel speakers. So thank you very much for your contributions, Mark, Neil, Kate. It's just wonderful to hear from 3 very different backgrounds and projects and places of the country, but also to hear the inspiration and the power of the membership and the model that you've harnessed there to generate these locally owned renewable energy assets. So that's brilliant, and we're really hoping that that will inspire more people to think about doing this in due course. I've put a link in there to 2 follow-on webinars. We've got one next week about generating green jobs, and the following week about community energy at scale. But if you follow that link, it'll take you to the Cooperatives UK website anyway, where you'll find lots of other information about co-ops, about community energy, about community shares. And if you want to get in touch, my contact details are in the chat higher up as well, so you'll be able to find those. But we will share around the slides from today. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Apologies for running over a little bit, but we will have the recording of this we can share as well if anyone's missed any bits. But yeah, I'll just thank the panel again, and have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.